I've heard a lot about Yakuza over the years, but I'd really never sat down and played one. I think I had a couple Yakuza games free on PlayStation Plus that I never played that like way back on PS3. But recently Yakuza Kiwami finally came out free on PlayStation Plus, which is a remake of Yakuza 1. And I wasn't really sure how I'd like it. I never really was quite sure about what the game was. It kind of seemed like a GTA kind of style game. But I had also really just seen some of the kind of wackiness and then also just kind of the combat in the game. But I didn't know if it was a thing where you could just run around this big map and grab a car or something like that. So I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. Um, but I just heard so many great things over the years again, and I will absolutely say I think they are absolutely right. Yakuza Kiwami and just kind of the Yakuza games in general is just like such a neat kind of like endearing game that I almost just kind of coined as like a good feel kind of game. So when I first started up, there is no English voiceover, which I think the only other game to actually have that was actually Yakuza 1 on the PS2. Every game since then has been just the Japanese voice acting with English subtitles. And it was a little bit of a turnoff for me at first, but I can't see going back to that. I really can't see playing this game with kind of some lackluster English voice acting. So I absolutely love just the kind of Japanese voice acting. So you play as a guy named Kazuma Kiryu, who they call the Dragon of Dojima. And so he's part of this Dojima clan or the Tojo clan. Kind of, it's, with the Yakuza, there's different kind of sects and stuff like that, kind of like the mob, mafia kind of thing in Japan. But it's a game where you kind of just, it's really even hard to describe. And really just kind of where the basis of the story goes is Kazuma kind of gets thrown in prison for something that happens, and it's maybe a slight spoiler, but it happens maybe less than 30 minutes into the game. So Kazuma's coming back after 10 years of being in prison and is really just kind of catching up on all of the things that happen. You can also see there's something that happens in the game that leads Kazuma to go into prison. But a lot of it's him coming back after 10 years and just trying to find his way again and just trying to solve what happened. So he's got his other friends. One of the big ones you'll meet, and not necessarily a friend, kind of an enemy at times, but is Goro Majima. And you might have heard of him before. If you've seen any trailers, he's the guy that kind of wears like the kind of snake leather jacket kind of thing, and he's got an eye patch. Kind of just a wacky character. And he really is just the complete best part of this entire game. I just absolutely love whenever he shows up, and there's a part in the game to kind of help Kazuma kind of regain his abilities and find out who he is kind of thing, is this Majima Everywhere system. And so this kind of boasts Kazuma's what they call like dragon moves and kind of helps him gain experience and learn new moves. So it's one of those games where you're like, hey, you're really powerful at the beginning of the game, but then you're in prison and you come back, you don't really know how to fight as well anymore. So just all the wackinesses of him showing up like as a cop and running around after you. There's a zombie version where it's like you're fighting these, like he dresses up like a zombie and acts like a zombie. There's ones like he like dresses like a break dancer. It's just really, really weird and really funny. A lot of it's just kind of you have to experience for yourself. But he doesn't actually play too much of a central role in the story, more than he's just kind of a support character that just kind of shows up here and there. But again, the game takes place in this area of Japan called Kamurocho, which is what they kind of call the red light district. And so from what it sounds like to me is this is kind of the map for a lot of other Yakuza games too. And it's not a huge map, but it's a good size map. There is no vehicles you get into or anything like that. So it's all just kind of on the ground and stuff. But it does kind of become that kind of game where like, hey, you complete a chapter, all these different side quests open up, or you can go straight to the marker that progresses the story even more, or you can just do a whole bunch of side quests. But basically, even if it be the main story or it be side quests, everything kind of buckles down to just fighting a bunch of people. And it's kind of a little bit necessarily like an Assassin's Creed kind of style, but just kind of in a way that, you kind of usually just take on one guy at a time. One guy kind of comes after you. Maybe somebody else tries to punch you. You block and counter that person. So there's 4 fighting styles overall. It's Brawler, Rush, Beast, and Dragon. So Brawler is pretty much the one I used almost exclusively. And that's kind of the just kind of all around, you're kind of not super quick, but you're not super tough. The most balanced. Rush has a lot of speed, but doesn't have a lot of power. Beast is slow, but is really powerful punches and kicks. But then Dragon is the one where you're basically leveling up the most over the game. So besides the Majima everywhere to increase the Dragon moves, and then this other guy named Komaki, I think maybe I'm mispronouncing that, but he also helps upgrade some moves. So the Dragon move set is pretty much like the worst during most of the game, but then once you finally upgrade a lot of those moves and combos and stuff like that, the Dragon is actually probably the best fighting style. But still, I pretty much just use Brawler exclusively. I never really had any desire to want to change moves. It was just seemed to me the easiest way to dispatch of enemies. So with those 4 different styles, you also have these things called heat actions. So you have underneath your health bar is kind of this heat bar. So it's kind of like almost kind of like a super meter, I would say. So once it gets to a certain area and you do a certain move, whether if you have a certain weapon or if you do some certain counter attack, that kind of thing, or if like you're getting up after you've fallen down or get knocked down, I should say, you can press triangle like when the icon appears, and that kind of gives a little like cinematic action where Kiryu just kind of busts somebody's head in, or kind of just does a really kind of powerful move. And some of them are absolutely brutal. It's not, ton of gore kind of stuff or anything like that, but there's some stuff where you just kind of go, oh man, and it's not Mortal Kombat kind of gruesome or anything, but it's kind of rough. Yeah, so again, it's a decent sized map with just so many side quests, and they call them sub stories in this game. And one thing I love to do with these kind of games is like, I'm going to spend today, like all today is going to be is playing through the main story. And then maybe tomorrow will be all I'm going to do is just play side quests. And I think that works out really well and such. But the one thing that's really tough is it's kind of hard to follow the story at times. There's just a lot of different characters, and they do introduce them pretty well. But there's so many kind of different scenes, and sometimes the scenes are out of order. And it's hard to kind of keep up with what's going on. Even just playing through the normal game, it's a lot harder when you take off like a couple of days just playing side quests, and then you decide, okay, well now I'm going to go back to the main story. You're kind of like, I don't really even remember what is happening right now. So that can be kind of jarring from time to time, but part of it where I feel like where I use the term good feel like gameplay is definitely with the sub stories of just Kazuma going around town helping people. And a lot of it's just like, hey, this guy's messing with me or something like that. So then you go over there, you try to confront him, and he's gonna beat you up, and of course you just beat him up. And it's a lot of just like learning, like, what I did back there, like it wasn't good. Like, Kazuma, like you really helped me figure out that I need to do this with my life, and I'm going to go help somebody else. And it's a lot of those kind of stories. That's just like, it's just really nice. There's been so many little stories that you almost feel good. Like you almost just feel like you want to go help more people and stuff. And for those kind of missions, there's also just some really wacky side missions, just with some really weird characters. I can't even necessarily really think of any off the top of my head, but some of them include Majima, which he's just there to kind of be a goofball and dance and come up with all these one-liners. And it's really good where they place him. Like you could just be going to a bar and getting a drink, but then Majima's there and he's like the bartender. Or you could be like, I don't know, I'm just going to go in this dance club and just like see what's in here. And then like Majima's there like dancing around and you have to go fight him. It's just really neat. So you also have tons of mini games, and I even just wrote down some of them. So there's like this RC car thing. The other big one is like this card game where you're fighting with like bugs, but they're gals dressed up in costumes. It's really weird. Then it's kind of like a rock paper scissors game thing. But there's karaoke, there's bowling, there's mahjong, there's darts, billiards, poker. There's just all these different kind of games that it's just kind of really so much to kind of learn, and just so many side things to do. And a lot of the trophies are kind of the biggest trophy that's going to hang up a lot of people in the game for the platinum is the completing the completion list, which does have you doing like a certain score in mahjong and a certain score in all of these other kind of Japanese games that like I have absolutely no idea how they work. So eventually I just kind of called it quits there. I completed all of the sub stories, including the main story, and some side stuff here too. But it's really kind of, you really have to be invested if you want to go for the platinum. And it really kind of is like a badge of honor. Specifically, it sounds like all of the Yakuza games are. So that's kind of a big thing. But again, going through the main story, going through the gameplay, sub-stories, it really can be kind of repetitive, where a lot of things are just, hey, here's a problem, go to this thing, this guy fights you, you fight them, you beat them up, and that just kind of progresses the story. But I do really kind of enjoy it just because there's a lot of those different actions, and just how they kind of make Kiryu and Kazuma just feel like a total badass is just super fun. Where it's just like you just have these like punks on the street, and they're messing with a dog that you find at some point, and it's just Kazuma just says something to the fact like, you know, like, this is very unfortunate for you because I've been having a very bad day, and then, you know, just proceeds to just beat the crap out of him in just kind of the coolest way possible. So there is kind of some speaking like with the combat, you learn after a while with kind of some upgrades. You get upgrade points, you get skill points, those kinds of things, and upgrades, where eventually you get these kind of, I don't really know what they call them, but I think they call it either be like climax heat moves or something like that, but they're also heat actions. But they're really just super powerful moves. So especially it only kind of works on like bosses or people with like large health bars, where they kind of like crouch over and they start like glowing a certain color. So for example, the brawler style is blue. So if the kind of guy like crouches over and he starts glowing blue, that's when you switch to the brawler style. And if you have a certain amount of your heat built up, you can just absolutely just wail on a guy. So those are really kind of rewarding to use for sure. Again, there's just so much in this game, and even it just being a remake of the first game, I feel like there's enough complexity to it, but it's also just so simple in the same way. It's just really endearing, where you can just, you know, it's just a good feel kind of game where you feel like you're constantly helping people. There's obviously some, you know, kind of some sad down spots or whatnot, but all in all, it's a pretty decent story. But I think it's maybe only $20. I wonder if that's actually where it came out at that price. So I mean, there's so many Yakuza games out there. So this is Yakuza Kiwami. It's a remake of the first. There's Yakuza Kiwami 2 that came out in 2018, which is a remake of the second game. Yakuza 6, which is the final game in the Kazuma storyline, also came out in 2018. That's when Kiwami and then Yakuza 0 came out in 2017. There's just so many different Yakuza games coming out. And I think they're also porting, I think it's the other PS3 games, so I guess 3, 4, and 5. I think they're porting those to PS4. So I guess eventually there's going to be all of them on PS4. And it's also just announced that the game in Japan called Judge Eyes, that's made by the Yakuza team, is coming to the West in the summer by the name of Judgment. And that actually has English VO, and they've got a trailer out. It looks pretty cool, but it doesn't really have to do with Kazuma as it is. I don't necessarily know if it's 100% in the Yakuza franchise, but it does take place in Kamurocho, and it is kind of a I almost want to say like a Law and Order kind of thing. Like you're kind of a detective, and then you also kind of have some law and cases, and you know, some court cases to deal with and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that's mostly all I have to say about it. it does kind of get repetitive, but the story and just kind of how it perceives itself and just kind of how just positive the game is overall, really just kind of drove me to want to complete it. Again, not going to completely push for the platinum because I feel like it's kind of one of those cases that, um, you know, you're going to be playing that game so much just to do menial things for the platinum that you kind of might lose some enjoyment out of it. So I'm just kind of stopping with completing all the side quests, and I would also recommend that as well. I'd say it maybe took me 30-40 hours even to do that, so there's definitely a lot of gameplay there. I'm certainly interested in doing other Yakuza games. I tried to start Yakuza 4 on PS3, played just a little bit of it. I might get back to it, I don't know. Of course, they've made just so many improvements over the years, and it's kind of when you're kind of going backwards to kind of a more archaic way, it's kind of tough to get used to that. But for sure, I don't know if immediately I'm going to be playing other Yakuza games. I know Yakuza 0 is one people talk about all the time that you need to play. But again, with so many other games coming out, and it's a brand new year, so many different games coming out in January and February and so on and so forth. Not sure when I'll get to it. I assume maybe another Yakuza game at some point will also be free on PlayStation Plus, so I also kind of look forward to that. Kind of a good way to jump in and play them. But yeah, if you're listening to this, let me know your thoughts on Yakuza. Didn't really get too in depth. Didn't really want to. Some of my other post games have been kind of spoiler related. I didn't want it to be spoiler related with this one. Not because there's nothing really to talk about. But it's just kind of a story that's not super important, and it's kind of one of the factors to kind of pull you through the game. So I didn't want to go out and kind of spoil that for some people. But definitely let me know if you've ever played Yakuza or you're looking forward to play Yakuza. I will also try and answer your comments best I can in the comments below. You can also find me on Twitter at BossmanCCrowder, and we'll plan on probably having some more post-game discussions coming up. So thanks for listening. Bye.